Hello everyone, my name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute. Thanks for joining me for Preston's Ponderings. Well, just recently, President Obama said that Israel, in order to have any chance of peace in the Middle East, said that Israel must return to the 1967 borders. Borders that are highly disputed. Prime Minister Netanyahu, in response, immediately said, that is not going to happen. That means that Israel would not be able to defend herself against her enemies. And the Zionist groups all over America, the so-called prophecy experts in America, are already up in arms. They're signing petitions to send to President Obama saying that land belongs to Israel, and if you are trying to get them to give up that land, then you stand against Israel. This is clearly a volatile issue. You know, one of the most common arguments that we hear is that land belongs to Israel forever. God promised to give it to Abraham and his descendants forever. That means it still belongs to the Jews. Well, let me ask you. I want you to think about something with me, okay? Do you believe that the law of Moses is still in effect today? You know, all three major views of eschatology, even my most ardent Zionist friends, would say, oh, no, the law of Moses is no longer in effect. Well, okay, let's go just a little bit further. Do you believe that the Levitical priesthood is still binding today in order to come before God? And again, even the most ardent dispensationalists, generally speaking, would say, no. I'm a Christian, and I may not be of the Levitical priesthood, but I belong to Christ, and therefore I am able to offer sacrifices to God through Christ on my own. I don't need the Levitical priesthood. Okay? Do you believe that animal sacrifices are still binding and effective and should be offered as acceptable offerings, mandated by God? And you will probably say, oh, no. The one-time for all-time perfect gift of Jesus Christ, his death on the cross, has paid my debt. I don't have to offer animal sacrifices today. Okay, let me see. Let me ask you this question. Do you travel to Jerusalem 3 times a year because you believe the Bible commands you to do so, there to offer animal sacrifices? And you go, well, no, that's part of the Mosaic law that was done away with, right? Yeah? Okay. Dispensational friends say, oh, that land belongs to Israel forever because God gave the land to Israel forever. But those same identical dispensational people will say the law of Moses has been done away with, the Levitical priesthood has been done away with, animal sacrifices have been done away with, temple worship has been done away with, abrogated, annulled, on and on. And you may be going, what's your point, Preston? My point's this. Do you realize that in the Old Testament, that the Levitical priesthood was an eternal, perpetual ordinance? But you see, even dispensationalists say that the Levitical priesthood has been annulled, abrogated, removed. Do you realize that animal sacrifices, that even the way the priests dressed in the Old Testament was according to eternal, perpetual, everlasting ordinances? Now, this is so according to Exodus chapters 25 through 40, as the institutions and the mandates for the tabernacle and temple worship were given. All of these things, the priesthood, the sacrifices, the priest's dress, the burning of incense, every ordinance that we have mentioned, okay? Priesthood, sacrifices, even the way the priests dressed, all of those were mandated by God as eternal, perpetual, everlasting commandments from God. as part of his everlasting, eternal, perpetual commandment or covenant with Israel. Now, you can't argue, on the one hand, that you believe the law of Moses has been set aside. That's the eternal law of Moses, without nullifying the argument that God gave the land to Israel forever. You cannot admit, agree, and argue that animal sacrifices have been annulled in Christ, and then turn around and say, oh, but the land belongs to Israel because it was given to her for Israel forever, because after all, the animal sacrifices were to be forever. You cannot argue that the yearly pilgrimages to Jerusalem are no longer necessary because we are in Christ and we get to worship Him anywhere we are, without nullifying the argument that the land belongs to Israel forever, because the same identical Hebrew word is used to describe the yearly pilgrimages, the priestly garments, the animal sacrifices, the entire Mosaic law. You see, the Hebrew word olam, which is translated as forever, everlasting, and eternal, etc., etc., to describe the land belonging to Israel forever, meant as long as God intended for it to. There are limitations, in other words, to that word. And most of my Zionist friends, most of my dispensational friends acknowledge and agree with that. And let me reiterate, if you believe the law of Moses, animal sacrifices, yearly pilgrimages, even the way the priests were supposed to dress, the burning of incense, if you believe that all of those things have been annulled in Christ, then you must believe logically that those eternal, perpetual, everlasting things have been annulled. Now, if those things could be annulled, listen to me, if those things could be annulled, then Israel's right to the land could be annulled. And it was. Because that was only supposed to be, believe it or not, the land was only supposed to be a shadow of better things to come. And Christ and His body and the heavenly country and the heavenly city, Hebrews 11, 13 to 16, are those things that physical land foreshadowed. Now, I developed this extensively in my book, Like Father, Like Son, on Clouds of Glory. Might I recommend that you take a look at that book? It can be found on my website, www.eschatology.org, or BibleProphecy.com. Because in that book, I go into great detail in demonstrating that old covenant land, while it was given to Israel, quote, forever, that forever was limited until that to which that land pointed, typologically, foreshadowing, until that time, that place, and that reality, life in Christ, became a reality. We'll have more on this. Thanks for joining me for Preston's Ponderings. We'll see you on the flip side.